He's never fought us. Not us united.
My favorite moment in the entire... Maybe I should complicate this before I start speaking here.
Welcome to Under Two Capes. I'm Jared, and today it's just going to be me tonight. But today I'm going to talk about who Superman would romance if he were in Marvel. And this was a topic suggestion from my good friend Raul Ryan. Raul, if you're watching this, thanks for the suggestion. So again, we're talking about this because for those of you that don't know, or for those of you that are newer to the channel, I had a series on my thing called Pairing Fridays, which were basically I would pair DC characters with Marvel characters and see what sort of like shenanigans they would get into. And kind of got out of it when the channel picked up because I had a content system, but I'm revisiting it. So if it's popular, I may do it again. So I have this list from CBR that's basically 10 Marvel characters Superman would fall in love with. There's one on this list that Raul specifically requested, and that is Storm. And I'm going to spend the most time on that. But for right now, I'm going to go through the list. I'll read their reasons for why this would be a good pairing. And then what I'll do is I'll like essentially say if I agree with them. In fact, I'll share the screen so you all can watch with me. For those of you on the audio, you can go to Comics League on YouTube, and then we will be able to actually you will be able to actually see this. But all right, 10 Marvel characters Superman would fall in love with. First off, Clayman Superman is badass. I think he's one of the best artists to ever render Superman. So let's get started. All right, first is Thena of the Eternals. All right, Superman is no god, but he is undoubtedly godlike to the people of Earth. He is a god, because that's what DC is, gods amongst men, but I get what they're saying there. Superman can fly, lift unimaginable weight above his head, and shoot lasers from his eyes. Badass. Few beings in the universe can do the things he does. Hyperion. However, some characters in the Marvel Comics universe possess similar abilities. Okay, so they're basing this off of a power set. That's interesting. Let's see how they do this. Thena is a member of the Eternals, the race of superhumans who were sent to Earth to represent the Olympian gods. Pretty badass. Thena can similarly fly, lift weight, manipulate energy, and an array of things, including lasers. They're not technically gods, but for all intents and purposes, Superman and Thena are looked to as such, and their shared power and relationship to the world would surely bring them together. True, because this is sounding to me, I agree with this. This is sounding to me like why Superman and Wonder Woman got together in New 52, because they're both maneuvered as like the reason that they gave in Justice League number 12, which I do have as a floppy too. The reason that they gave as to why they got together was because they both felt isolated from people because of their position in the DC pantheon. That was one of the reasons, and I felt that was a very compelling reason to pair them. So you know what? I agree with this. Next one, Firestar. Okay, this is what I didn't expect. Let me read this. Firestar was created for the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends animated series in the 80s before making her comic book debut later that year. Firestar absorbs all microwave radiation and manipulates it into powerful bursts of fire. However, when she enters Earth's atmosphere, her powers increases as there is more microwave radiation to absorb. Okay. Similarly, Superman's power is based on the sun, and he grows stronger with the more solar radiation his body absorbs. True. Firestar and Superman could easily break their limits depending on how much energy they absorb. The two heroes could easily become godlike beings who bond over their shared methods of power accumulation. I am not sure if they would necessarily bond over the fact that you get powers from the sun, I get powers from the sun. Do we just become best friends? I disagree with that a little bit. I'm unfamiliar with Firestar as a character, so if you know her and think that she would be a good match for Superman, go ahead and drop in the comments below. Lilandra leads the Shi'ar Empire. Okay, so when the Shi'ar Empire accused Jean Grey of crimes committed by their Cosmic Phoenix Force, Cyclops and the X-Men intervened to save their teammate. Okay, throughout the by the way, expertly portrayed in the comics and in the animated series. So there you go. Throughout the confrontation, Professor Xavier fell in love with Lilandra, leader of the Shi'ar. Lilandra soon became Xavier's ally and wife, apparently. Lilandra is a compassionate alien queen who fought for her title, dethroning her tyrannical predecessor. Superman also has been in leadership positions, especially after discovering the battled city of Kandor. Superman saved what was left of his race, while Lilandra freed her own. The two characters share more than enough traits and experiences to be drawn to one another. Yes, this one I definitely agree with. Because yes, they both know what it's like to be a leader. Because not only with the Kryptonians, but Superman is seen. I mean, arguably, Batman could be seen as a leader of the Justice League, but the way I see it, Superman is the leader of the Justice League. There's no way around that, and everyone takes their cues off of him, which is similar to Lilandra. So I agree with this one. It's actually a really good one. Betty Ross. Okay, this is interesting. Superman is usually depicted as a symbol of hope, but many writers like to paint Superman as the villain. An evil Superman is a truly terrifying concept that has been beautifully explored in stories like Injustice and Grant Morrison's JLA Earth 2. In most evil Superman stories, Superman usually turns on humanity after suffering a great loss. His rage gets the better of him, and he becomes a tyrannical leader and destroyer. Marvel's Hulk is a character known for his unstoppable rage. However, Betty Ross, the woman Bruce Banner loves, usually manages to stop the Hulk, but Betty's love, surely worthy of a Star Sapphire ring, could be powerful enough to stop a disillusioned Man of Steel. Okay, so here's the thing. I disagree with this one, because this is under the assumption that this is not main continuity Superman they're operating off of. We're talking about main continuity Superman. So I'm going to disregard this one. I don't think Betty Ross would be good. Because if you see her as like Red She-Hulk, she's evil. Okay, Mary Jane. Superman and Spider-Man are two of the best superheroes in comic book history. True. And two of the most beloved characters in the real world. Yes, despite being heroes representing hope and responsibility in their fictional universes, Superman and Spider-Man have endured some truly devastating tragedies. Also true. Especially the way Marvel handles Spider-Man. I mean, you could argue that the Bendis era was the worst for Superman, but Spider-Man has had decades of damage that he's still trying to get over. Two characters responsible for uplifting these heroes and pushing them to carry on are Lois Lane and Mary Jane Olsen. And Diana! Superman and Spider-Man's greatest allies. Wonder Woman. Lois inspires Superman to be better, the same way he inspires the world. Again, Wonder Woman does that too. Similarly, MJ reminds Peter Parker what he fights for. If MJ were to meet Superman, there is no doubt she'd help him the same way she helps Peter. Okay, I could see that one. It'd be older MJ, obviously. Sif. Now, this is interesting. Let me see this one. Lois Lane is Superman's main love interest. When most people picture Superman's romantic life, the first character they think of is Lois. Not true. However, when DC relaunched their line of comics in 2011 under the New 52 banner, Superman writers and artists crafted a superpowered romance between Superman and Wonder Woman. Some fans weren't too pleased with the shift, vocal minority, but Superman and Wonder Woman worked really well as a couple. They did, yes, exactly. Both are essentially gods who wield incredible power. While Superman relies on his power alone, Diana is much more precise as a warrior. Sif is an Asgardian warrior in the Marvel Comics. Her skills with a blade would similarly complement Superman's strength in the battlefield. And I've always felt that Sif, even if you go with the MCU depiction, pre-Love and Thunder, because they butchered her in Love and Thunder, among a lot of other things, Sif was seen as like a tenacious warrior who would never give up. That is 100% Wonder Woman. So in my mind, yeah, she 100% works. Actually, I'm going to put the title up here. She 100% works as a romance for Superman. So particularly as we go for Superman. Rogue. Ooh. Superman is one powerful superhero, but while he uses his powers for good, his power level makes him extremely dangerous. Anytime a villain gains control over Superman or his powers, the world is in grave danger. Exactly like in the lead up to Infinite Crisis, Maxwell Lord was mind controlling Superman. That's not a recipe for success, people. Growing up, Clark took great care to control his power so he'd never harm anyone. In the Marvel universe, Rogue's powers almost exclusively hurt others. When Rogue touches someone, she gains their powers, thoughts, and memories. If she maintains contact long enough, she could kill them. That's complicated. Superman and Rogue have taken precautions their entire lives, and their shared experiences could bring the two heroes closer together. Yeah, that's true. I'll give you that one. Storm. All right. Superman may be a godlike being with too many superpowers to count, but he looks out for the little guy. Regardless of his incredible power, he is one of the most caring, compassionate heroes in comics. True. And he is constantly looked to for leadership, like I said. In Marvel Comics, Storm is a character others often look up to. Storm has led the X-Men and the Morlocks on many occasions. She also possesses godlike abilities, Omega-level mutant, and controlling the weather, calling down lightning at will, but she is not merely admired for her power, but rather her heart. Like most heroes, a Superman would easily admire Storm. Yeah, I could see that based upon, because when you look at Storm, she also is very compassionate. And that is 100. Again, she has that many of the same character qualities as Wonder Woman, except she doesn't have Wonder Woman's like. She doesn't have Wonder Woman's lack of an aversion to killing. Like Storm, 100% is against killing. In fact, she disowned Wolverine because there was a storyline that's like one of my favorites of all time called Second Coming, when the X-Men, the mainstream X-Men, are made aware of the X-Force, which are the X-Men characters that do lethal force. And when Wolverine says, "I don't regret killing these people," Storm says, "Well, then we can't be friends anymore." But basically, we have nothing more to say to each other. That's pretty much what it is. So, based upon so go back to what I was saying. Were there other qualities? Yeah, I could definitely see Storm working with Superman. I'm going to move on the list, but I'm going to come back to this one. She-Hulk. Interesting. During the Smallville TV series, Clark slowly develops powers. He constantly worries that his powers will lead to the deaths of others and is overjoyed anytime he meets someone with similar abilities. She-Hulk is one of Marvel's strongest heroes, not the show, and she'd be more than a match for the Man of Steel. She-Hulk also has had relationships with Luke Cage and Hercules and Juggernaut, but I think that was an alternate reality. Conversely, Superman has temporarily had relationships with Wonder Woman and even Barda. He never had a relationship with Barda. I got news for you. Both are attracted to strong heroes with big hearts. Jennifer Walters is also a lawyer who would share Clark's sense of truth and justice. Yes, 100%. And then Gamora is the last of her species. That's interesting. Let me just scroll down. Okay, there you go. Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, was rocketed away from his dying world and was discovered on Earth by Jonathan and Martha Kent. Just about every comic book reader knows the origin story of Superman, but not every superhero fan knows the comic book origin of Gamora. Despite what was presented in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where half of Gamora's race was killed by Thanos and his army, in the comic book, Gamora is the sole survivor. Oh, interesting. Gamora's species, the Xenwoboris, were wiped out by the baboon, lizard-like aliens. While Superman found acceptance on Earth, he's a biological Kryptonian. So he's brought companionship. So he could find companionship with someone that has a similar tragedy. That is true. That is 100% true. I could definitely see that working out well. But honestly, of this list, Storm actually is the best option, because when you look at Storm, she 100% shares all the qualities that I always say. Wonder Woman works well with Superman. She has the compassion. She has the ability for compassion, the ability to lead others. People look up to Storm, like revere Storm. Arguably, she is the face. She is one of the main characters that I would say is the face of the X-Men. And because oftentimes when Professor X is like gone, she takes over for him as like the head of the school and then the leader of the X-Men. So I think that she would work in the same type of a leadership role as Superman, as it tends to take in the DC universe. So I 100% agree with that with Storm. As it applies to a power set, yeah, I'm not really going off a power set for pairings, which a lot of these ones on this list went for, but it's, I mean, it just works, I guess. In terms of but yeah, character wise, yes, they are 100% compatible, and they would, I like to think, find a little companionship with each other. So next, let's discuss. All right, so in terms of in terms of essentially who I think Superman works the best with in DC first and Marvel, I think it will be Wonder Woman. Obviously, I've explained this many times, and one of the reasons why is because when you look at Wonder Woman, she she is arguably the most compatible with Superman of the Justice Leaguers, more compatible with Lois Lane. Here's why: because here's the thing. Ultimately, it's like she knows what Clark goes through on a daily basis. Wonder Woman does. So she essentially understands Clark better than Lois ever could. Second off, okay, so really, when you look about it, Clark is always hiding a part of himself from Lois. He has to be careful when he hugs her so he doesn't crush her. Yeah, yes, there are all these different like reasons why he can't be his full self around her. Diana, nothing, literally nothing like that exists. Nothing. He can be his full Clark Kent self. The secret identity goes away. He can be his full Kal-El of Krypton. There you go. And Diana teaches him to accept all parts of himself. Because my problem with Lois Lane is that she always encourages him to embrace just the Clark Kent identity. Just it. Wonder Woman is embrace all. That's why she calls him Cal and Clark, because she says, okay, Cal, you are human, you were raised human, but you're also Kryptonian, and you can't forget your heritage. Because one thing about Wonder Woman is that she always embraces her heritage. So that's the major reason why I think that they work together. As for which Marvel character I think specifically works with Superman, besides Power Princess, but that's basically Wonder Woman, so I'm not going to go with that, is honestly Emma Frost. Now you may be wondering, wait, what? Why Emma Frost? Okay, let me explain. With Emma, she strikes me as someone that's always seeking redemption for like her time with like the Hellfire Gala. That's why she joins the X-Men and like fight and like essentially fights her former allies and like does everything she does. Now, what's interesting, by the way, she had a really rough upbringing. If you read that Emma Frost series that I'm currently going through, I will be reviewing it on the channel. We are going to do a lot more Marvel Comics content. I just wanted to cover a lot of DC. But anyway, Superman is constantly helping people pick the path of the light. He inspires Batman. Like there was this fantastic scene in the Justice League cartoon when they think Superman died, but really he went to the future. But they do like the death of Superman funeral, like procession stuff. But anyway, at Superman's statue, Batman walks up because Batman does not believe Superman died. He's like, he thinks he like was transported somewhere or something like that. So Batman's not buying it. But in the scene that gives me chills to this day, he goes, in the event that you really are gone, I really wanted to thank you because you were the one who showed me that justice does not always have to happen in the dark, that you can always choose the light. That's the power of Superman. And that's why I always tell people, because I was having a conversation once with some guys at the beach, and they said, oh, Superman's a boring character. And I explained that, well, yeah, he has the powers, and he's always like truth, justice, in the American way. Yes, the American way. But what you have to understand about Superman is that he's an ideal. He's not only a person, he's an ideal. Superman is the ideal that no matter what happens, you can always persevere through it. You can always pick the better path. And Superman has like inspired the most, I guess, uninspired, but the most like, but with some of the most nefarious people to turn good. So really, ultimately, I think he could provide a guiding light to Emma Frost and help her like achieve that redemption path. That's just what I think right now, because let me put it this way: if it's not Emma Frost, who else would I place him with? Probably Captain Marvel, because he could teach her humility. Because that's what I think is really missing from Carol Danvers as a character. Because let me put it this way: she has like ridiculous amounts of power. So does Superman. When you look at Superman, by the saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely, Superman should be like dictator. Guess what? He is not. He is the most moral person, arguably the most moral individual in the DC multiverse. So ultimately, that's why it works. That's really a lot of the reasons why I pair him. That's why I put him with Captain Marvel, because ultimately, yes, he has all these powers, but he still acknowledges his weaknesses. He still acknowledges that there's more he can learn. That was my problem with Captain Marvel in the movie. Not once does she face a challenge. Superman, in his movie, my movie Man of Steel, he had to fight his own people and then eventually learn the lesson, choose humanity, and then learn the lesson of truly appreciating life, because he had to take one. So that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why I love Man of Steel, because it took a character that's as powerful as Superman and placed him in a situation where we'd never seen Superman placed. That's why it works. So, Captain Marvel in that way. In terms of which like regular humanish character, which street level character would I put Superman with? If I had to, probably honestly, they were kind of on par with that with Mary Jane, because of the support system she provides to Peter Parker. And I guarantee you, Superman would not trade his marriage to the devil. No. That would not work out. So now I'm actually going to war game this. How would this work out? How would Superman get into the Marvel universe and like hang out with Storm or Emma Frost? But how would he get in there? I would go with the Grant Morrison plan, because for those of you that don't know, so in the DC world, on the edge of the universe, is this thing called the Source Wall, which is basically the end of the known universe. And it's where you have like Darkseid's in prison, the Anti-Monitors in prison, all these different groups are in prison. Perpetual was in prison there once. So Grant Morrison wanted, but obviously he couldn't do it. He wasn't authorized. He wanted to basically have an indication that the Marvel universe is on the other side of the Source Wall. Like that's what divides Marvel from DC. So that's what I would do. Like he's fighting Darkseid, and Darkseid punches him through the Source Wall, or like hits him like his Omega beams, but it sends him through the Source Wall, and he ends up at Marvel. Then first I would establish that I would have him land and have no memory of who he is at first. Then we have these stories where it would basically be like a running theme throughout the Marvel books, where there's this being that keeps saving people and then disappearing, kind of like in Smallville where they had like the blur. And then eventually he emerges. I'm not sure if he calls himself Superman or not, because he still doesn't have his memory. That's where he goes to like Xavier, because he hears that there's a telepath. He knows something's wrong. He knows that he can't remember a certain part of his life. So he ends up going to the Xavier school and asking them for help. And Emma unlocks his memories. Either they fall in love, or Storm, or Captain Marvel, or whatever. I'm going to go with Storm, since that was the pairing that inspired this. Maybe Darkseid would invade the Marvel universe to take over, because maybe the anti-life equation, maybe he thinks the key are the telepaths at Marvel. Maybe that's the key to unlocking the anti-life equation. So Darkseid boom tubes in front of the X-Mansion, and Superman and the X-Men come out and just have an epic battle against Darkseid. That's how I would see that coming. And then eventually, after the battle, Superman takes Darkseid through the boom tube and then goes on his merry way. That's the way I would essentially write that storyline. There could be a tie-in. I would do one tie-in, just one, and that is kind of like the world without Superman, where in DC it reacts because everyone thinks he's dead, and then he comes through with Darkseid. Because remember, he got hit with the Omega beams, and it's kind of like in Final Crisis, where everyone thought Batman died, but he really didn't. So essentially, that's essentially the way I would essentially run that, because I think it would be like it's an interesting like thought experiment to actually roll with, because that's why I do these pairing videos, because you get to like see like similar the ways that the DC and Marvel universe complement each other. That's why I'm a fan of both. I'm more of a fan of DC, but I love Marvel very much. In particular, like their movies and a few of their comic books. I'm still feeling my way around as I try and build up my Marvel library. But I love Marvel, so it's nice to be able to execute these thought experiments in order to essentially appreciate these characters more. So on that note, I'm gonna move on to another topic that I wanted to talk about. But thanks to Raul Ryan for suggesting our primary topic of the week. That was a good 25 minutes. Sweet. So for the rest of this episode, I want to talk about why, speaking of fantastic characters, and I noticed that when I put my community post up, my first community post, and I asked you guys what you guys wanted to see. You guys want to see more character studies. So I'm going to give you guys a character study. I'm going to give you why I think Barbara Gordon Batgirl is a fantastic character. Because what inspired this is that, so I'm playing Gotham Knights. I'm reading Batman comics. And really what's interesting when you think of Batgirl, when I'm looking at it, is that first off, she's a fantastic character. So I'm just going to throw that on there. Now, so the first reason is because, and it's why a lot of the Bat family characters are great, it's the idea of tenacity. Because if you look at what she came back from, so for those that don't know, and like then I think it was like the early 2000s, early 90s, they published a book called The Killing Joke by Alan Moore and Brian Boland. In that one, Barbara shot in the spine by the Joker. He didn't know she was Batgirl at the time, but he shot her in the spine, and that she was paralyzed from the waist down and became Oracle, which is essentially an information broker. She provided intelligence to like Bat Family, the Justice League, and then the Suicide Squad as well. So she came back from that and managed to find ways to still be a superhero despite going through this traumatic experience, and that is nothing short of inspiring. It's like if you're someone who's definitely abled, here's a character for you who uses her issue, if you will, and turns it into a strength. She doesn't let it consume her. She doesn't let it master her. She masters it. So, and then eventually she was able to bounce back and become a Batgirl through magic spinal surgery. But my point is that Barbara didn't give up, and this is another reason why I love the Three Jokers storyline, because it really delves into like, well, the thesis of the book is here's the trauma. It deals with the trauma that Barbara Gordon, Batman, and Jason Todd went through at the hands of the Joker, and we get like a good like comparison between Barbara and Jason, in that Barbara had an entire support system when she got injured, and Jason didn't. That's why he ended up like that. But my point is that you see, it's like essentially that there's this scene where Jason is staying at her apartment, and for some reason he starts snooping. He sees the calendar from when she was paralyzed, about going to like her PT, and all the books she read to like deal with chronic pain. And it's an effective way of showing showing how someone overcomes such a traumatic experience. So there's that. Another thing that she is a leader, because when you think about it, she's oftentimes she has like essentially she has essentially like I guess kept Batman honest. If you get my drift, it's not really like I mean I'm not trying to say Batman's dishonest, but she has essentially served as Batman's morality when it comes to being Batman and being a crime fighter. Oftentimes, she's often there, like Grayson is, in correcting Batman's behavior when he goes a little too dark, and she's always there for him when he's suffering. And that's just being a good friend. Additionally, when I think of Batgirl, what's interesting is really when you think about it, she really when I think of Batgirl, I don't know why it's so hard to talk today, but when it comes to Batgirl, I always felt that of the Bat family characters, she is one of the ones that okay. So one of the things that Batman, one of the things I noticed in Batman, like Batman fandom, like conversation, is that who would take up the mantle, who would take up the cowl if Batman died? They had a whole event called Battle for the Cowl for this. I say no one would. Here's why, and this will connect to Batgirl, because Bruce doesn't want anyone to take up the mantle of Batman. He wants them to be their own heroes. And how does this link to Barbara Gordon? Well, she is an offshoot of Batman, Batgirl, but here's the difference. She uses her persona. Essentially, she's who Batman should be, because here's the thing. She's gone through this similar trauma to Batman. It's not the same, similar trauma. Could be because she was more like she was older when it happened, but stay with me. She's essentially went through a very similar trauma to what Bruce did, and she ended up a better person. Because ultimately, here's the thing: Batman knows he's not a good person. In fact, there was this great scene in, I think it's Hush, where Batman is fighting Superman, who's under control of Poison Ivy, and he basically goes, deep down, Clark is a good person, and deep down, I'm not. So Batman straight up knows that he's not a good person, and Batman has routinely said, I don't want any of my people to become Batman. I want them to become their own heroes. They don't have to essentially repeat my mistakes. So you look at how Barbara is as a superhero. She's positive, she's happy, she's trusting, she's essentially non-Batman Batgirl. That's really what she is. Because when you think about it, and this is why Wonder Bat doesn't work, because Batman trusts literally no one. Literally no one. And Batgirl trusts, to a certain degree, everyone. In other words, Batgirl is more emotionally mature than Batman, when you think about it. That's a major reason why I think that she is such an amazing character. And second off, let's talk about how much of a badass she became, even after losing her ability to walk. Because when you think about it, she was trusted by the Suicide Squad, by Amanda Waller, who only picks the best of the best. She provided intelligence to Amanda Waller, the Justice League, and the Bat family, oftentimes at once. So think about how skilled of an individual she was behind that keyboard. And she still is, because she still does information work. She still does her Oracle stuff a lot of times. In fact, I think in current DC, she's not Batgirl right now. You know, she can walk. She's mainly behind a computer, which I get the feeling that DC felt that after they established her as Oracle, they kind of, most people preferred her as Oracle, and that's the thing. So I think that that's kind of why they're sort of starting to push her more toward being Oracle, because DC detected that when they just, because it was in the new 52, I believe, that they fixed her spine so she could walk, and everyone's like, okay, I get that. I get you want to be able to write Batgirl books, but first off, it was really cheap. Nanorobots. What? You have like all this BS stuff about being able to resurrect people from the dead. You have a pit that when you put people in, it brings them back to life. You could just put her in the Lazarus pit, because here's the thing. the Lazarus Pit can heal you from any injury. No one thought to put. I get the whole. It kind of makes you go crazy, but still, I'm like, no one thought like maybe a short dose of the Lazarus Pit would have worked. But my point is that DC detected that they kind of took away very valuable, a very like I'm trying to think of what the right way to say this. They took away a popular version of the character when they just haphazardly said she can walk now. So, but I know she can still walk, but a lot I would argue most people liked her more as Oracle. So I guess that's why they're kind of pushing her more toward that. And plus, they have like 3 other people that have served as Batgirls. There's Stephanie Brown, Cassandra Cain, and there's one more. I can't believe I'm forgetting this person's name. My point is, there's like multiple people that have been Batgirl in the past. I think there's 2. There's multiple people that have been Batgirl and can take over for her. In fact, that's what happened in the comics. I believe it was either I think it was last year in the Tom Taylor Nightwing run or something like that, that they established that I think it was either Stephanie Brown or Cassandra Cain are going to be the new Batgirl. So that's my key point there, is that she is when you think about everything that she has overcome, and she turned it into like this uber valuable skill. It's like even if you read like Grant Morrison's JLA, she is providing all the information during like multiverse ending events for the Justice League. So I'm like, oh, that is really cool. So that's ultimately why. That's the main reason why I think Barbara Gordon is a terrific character. You can drop in the comments why you think Barbara Gordon is a terrific character that needs more attention. Maybe they can release a good movie for her now, because remember, she was supposed to be in the Ben Affleck Batman movie, which they could still release on HBO Max or in the theaters, because when you think about it, that was tied to a Justice League. I'm sure they're going to use Zack Snyder, at least Zack Snyder's Justice League as canon, or they'll do something. But if they do a Ben Affleck Batman movie, they can easily just bring in Batgirl, say she exists, and then we're done. You don't have to do a Batgirl origin in the movie. You really don't. And then what you can do essentially is just go from there. That's really what I think DC should do. The problem with the Batgirl movie that was going to be released, which I still think they should have just released on HBO Max and been done with it. But the reason why they canceled is because it was tied too much into certain elements that Zaslav was already reversing. Case in point, Michael Keaton was the main universe Batman, and he was supposed to like team up with the Snyderverse Jim Gordon, and they gave no indication on how this works. So really, when you think about it, it was a very sloppily put together plan that they had at the old regime. So that's really why it was canned. Do I think it deserved to come out? Well, of course, creative vision. I'm totally fine with that. So my point, that's really my point. I think that that after she's introduced in a Batman movie, they could 100% do essentially a Batgirl movie. And they could even do the Oracle years, have her be Oracle, they can find a way to make like some kind of like cyber superhero thing work. Or maybe what they could do, the Killing Joke already happened. And when we see like what we could do is that when we see, here's how they can do it. So Deathstroke, assuming they go with the Ben Affleck script, Deathstroke is the villain in the movie. We know that. We know Batgirl herself is going to team up with Batman and fight Deathstroke. What if he cuts her spine? Because remember, in Young Justice, they sort of changed the Barbara Gordon Oracle origin so that when Cassandra Cain was going to kill the Joker, so Cassandra wouldn't have to live with that what's the word, guilt. Batgirl dove in front of the blade and like Cassandra Cain ended up cutting her spine. So that's how Barbara ended up in the wheelchair. So I think that would be an interesting way to do like Killing Joke, but not do Killing Joke, because there are certain things in Killing Joke I don't think should be adapted. And there are certain things that should not be added to the Killing Joke. Like the first half hour of the Killing Joke animated movie was so horrible. But that's besides the point. I'm not doing that. I need to have the boys on the stream to talk about why the Killing Joke is a really crappy Batman movie. But on that note, I think that's a good place to leave it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment below who you think Superman works best with in terms of relationships. And also comment below why you think Barbara Gordon is a great character, or if you think someone else was better as Batgirl, if you liked her more as Oracle. I want to hear from you. So thanks again to Raul Ryan for suggesting this week's topic. And I will see you in the next video. Stay heroic, everyone. Bye-bye.